You are now listening to the Do It Movement podcast, where we share our experiences in real estate investing and encourage you to take action. You don't want to miss what we have in store today, so let's welcome our host, Martine Richardson, and our co-host, Lori Eubanks.
What's up, Do It Movement listeners? This is your host, Martine Richardson, your buy and hold coach. I am joined today with my co-host, Lori Eubanks, and our guest, Ray Rivera. How are you doing today, Ray?
I'm very well. Grateful to be here. Thank you.
We are so excited to have you, Ray. We have been following everything you're doing and just so excited that we get, information and how your story in real estate. When did you start this journey?
Yeah, so I started in real estate initially like a real estate agent. That was my foot in the door. Well, taking it back, I started as a property manager or in property management, that for 3 years. Then I got into the sales side. I've been doing that. I'm still licensed, but till about a year ago, I was doing it full time. So 9 years. And I started my investment journey 5 years ago, almost 6. And that was my first little taste, right? Red pill, blue pill. That was my first taste on the other side.
What caused you to get into investing?
I'll give him a shout out. I think you all know him. I had this aha moment while wearing my agent hat, consulting a client. His name is Tan. Shout out Tan. And I had the pleasure of helping Tan acquire his first property. I was his agent. He was new in accounting at VCU. And I had this epiphany of, here's a young man, gun-ho, American dream, and knows nothing about the RVA, Richmond, Virginia market, knows nothing about construction, nothing really about investments per se, and he went all in on it. And that was my aha moment of just thinking back, right, like roots, ground roots, my mom come to this country, and growing up in Brooklyn, New York, seeing so much opportunity, but never really being able to capitalize. And now that here I am seeing this, like it was my moment where I said, what am I doing? And that was the beginning of the end.
Yes, so grateful that you did. And so when you jumped into real estate, how did you find that first deal and did you finance it?
Yeah, solid question. So the first deal was actually on market. I did finance it. Yes.
Okay.
We took some hard money against it. I got introduced to a lender. I had got in at the time. It was me and a different partner, and I had heard of a few different notable folks that at the time were doing lots of fix and flips or ground up, and I got plugged in. I actually gave a little shout out. I had talked to Chris Jefferson. Chris and I sat down for about an hour, never forget it, Bar Louie, West End, Short Pump, and he said, talk to this person. I talked to that person, and they ended up loaning to us. So we ended up taking that first leap of faith, and we did well. I had a client of mine that I had consulted as a client. I was an agent, and he had has a Class A general contractor construction license, and he said, Ray, I'll do you a solid. If you believe in investing so much, because I was trying to get him to do it, and he was slightly afraid, right? He said, you do it, and if it goes well, then I'll consider doing it. And he nudged me, right? I think sometimes you need that. Sometimes it's a coach. In my case, it was a client that basically said, put your money where your mouth is. And my reservation was because I wasn't very well versed with construction. And he said, I got you, right? I will get that taken care of for you. And in the meantime, let's see how you do. And so we did our first flip. And then shortly after that, I had another opportunity on market, very, very economical property down in Colonial Heights. This is, again, 5 years ago, was still very much more untouched. And fast forward, my contractor was busy. So he said, I can't help you, but I'll do you a solid again. I'll walk it. I'll price it. I'll tell you what the going rate is for what you need. Find another contractor. And so I had gotten word. I actually contacted Tans at the time, his go-to contractor. He said, I'll do it. We did that in about 26 days. He had a big crew, like 15, 20 people.
Wow.
And we did well. Between those two, we gross profitability was about 110,000, give or take.
Wow.
We did that in about 5 months, all in. And that was the moment where I said, how many houses I had to sell as an agent to make $110,000? That was when I took the pill again, right? You couldn't unsee what you saw. And I still enjoyed, so I stayed as an agent for many, many years after that, consulted many, many clients, 278 clients after that, to be exact. And it's a beautiful thing, yet ultimately the goal was I want to build something, right? And plug, right, coming from New York, from Bushwick, New York, urban city environment, minority driven, low socioeconomic. I saw opportunity come and go. I saw certain people that don't look like me come in and buy up my neighborhood.
Mhm.
I always had truth. I had always asked my father, why are we in that position, right? And I think as a child, you see these things. So to me now, as an adult, I said staying in place and not doing anything is a risk, but then taking a chance, it's a risk. It's all a risk. So what do you feel most confident in? And that was the moment I was like, okay, I'm going in, let's do it. So yeah, that's my story.
I love it. Well, the story doesn't end there. So you did these flips, you realized, oh, I should have been drinking the Kool-Aid. So now you're inspiring those around you. But there was a time in your career where you shifted more towards the buy and hold. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how, your transition into that mentality?
Absolutely. Bio Host, we started about 3 years ago, give or take. I had an opportunity, actually a little bit longer now, a little bit longer because COVID has been, 4 years? 2024, almost 2025, so it's been almost 5 years. So right before COVID, same contractor, the one who helped me that first time, we stayed loyal to one another for many, many years. We still have a great relationship. Yet I had reached out to him because he had mentioned that he wanted to do some buy and holds. Rule of thumb, right, that I had heard at the time was, hey, buy 2 or 3 properties, fix and flips, and then go buy another door to hold on to, right, and then depreciate it. I didn't know what that was. I just knew that was the rule of thumb. And just listen, right? Like the acronym, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
I So fast forward, what I ended up doing was I saw this duplex up in the north side of Richmond, and I look at it. It's in an area called, Brooklyn Park Boulevard
Yeah.
area. Saw this property. I didn't think it was too bad of condition, so I sent it off to him. Right. So agent hat, my fiduciary obligation is to my client. So I sent it out to him, and I said, this is a hot one. I think that this area is going to go up quite a bit over the next few years. It was off market through a wholesaler. So by then I had started building a recognition with other contacts, with wholesalers, other investors. And so they started seeing me as someone that had a lot of a lot of clients who work with investors that actually close successfully with as little headache as possible. Big one. And so he sent it to me. He's from Northern Virginia. His name is Ashley Ellis to be exact. Shout out to him. He sent it to me. I like to give people credit where it's owed, right?
Right.
So fast forward, I present this opportunity to my client, Mr. Chavez. And at the time he goes, I like it, right, but I don't know. And by then I already realized how many opportunities I could have capitalized on that I hadn't. So I had now more experience, and I came back and I said, well, look, I want to be transparent with you. If you're not buying this, and these other people that I'm working with closely aren't buying this, I'm buying this.
That's right.
And he goes, go for it. I immediately reached out. People didn't get back to me. I jumped on it. I purchased it. And it's wild. We bought it for $160,000. We put $100,000 in, 105 to be exact. After paying lender and all that, we were in at about 300-ish, like 301, 302. It appraised for 500,000.
Ooh.
So I was into that
That's
deal
amazing.
and actually get back $47,000 tax free. And initial cost to take this property on was $18,000.
Wow.
So, there was a lot of learning curves. I did end up having to put more capital because my initial, right, I was learning. My initial thought process was, it's only going to be $60,000, $70,000. So next thing you know, I'm like, this is $60,000, $70,000 I have to pay out of pocket now. And I didn't know OPM. I didn't know bridge loans. I didn't know anything. So you just like figure it out, right? And that's one thing I've learned about investing is you figure it out. You have to be resourceful. But that was my taste of buy and hold. We did well on that one. We still own that property to this day. It still saves us quite a bit of money on depreciation each year. I'm grateful for that. And that was a taste of ownership. I went straight into small duplexes, multifamily.
That's amazing. Wow. So you got that buy and hold feel where you got the tax-free money, which is so important when you're doing buy and hold and you can pull money and not pay taxes. That's a win. So what after that deal, how long until you bought the next rental?
Solid question. I think it lasted maybe a year,
Okay.
year and a half, only because that was right when COVID was going about, but at the same time, or maybe slightly before, It was when the removal of the statutes were happening here in our market. And I remember this specifically because I had to get a consultant. So here's what again, shout out. I know, Martine, you have coaching. I will tell you what you don't know, you better know. And if you don't know, you're going to pay. You just don't realize it. You're going to pay financially. You're going to pay with peace of mind, and you're going to pay with a lot of time. And you can pay risking to the point where you can lose what you have. So you're going to pay. And as someone that's more experienced, I realize that you're going to always pay. So just get mentored, get plugged in.
Just pay up front.
I did this on the agent side of the business. I have spent tens of thousands, upwards of $100,000 in coaching. I should have done that in the investment side. And I just didn't know. I was ignorant, and maybe a little, ignorant, right, and naive to a certain extent. Well, I say this because that property I bought, I thought I knew enough to learn that I didn't know enough. I had gone to the tax records. I saw the zoning. I saw the classification. I pulled up codes, and I looked good. I was like, we got this. And then I go and I submit permits, and they come back, and the city comes back and says, the square footage of the yard does not meet 2020 standard, so we cannot allow this as a duplex multifamily. If you want to proceed, Mr. Rivera, you can. However, you would have to go through this process called SPU, a special use process, not so SUP, sorry. And this right now, with the way things are going, it's a call that takes one call a month. I was like, okay, so one call a month. They're like, yes. So what happens? How long is this? They're like, an hour. About an hour. Okay. And what happens if you're not on the call? They're like, oh, then it gets bumped to the next month. Fast forward, it took about almost 9 months. And I had to get a consultant involved. In the meantime, I had already acquired the property. I already had depth in the property. I am communicating with my hard money lender every week, every month, an hour a week, letting them know what's going on. I ended up getting Mark Baker Consultants involved. I will never forget. They tell me, Ray, it's $3,000. And I go in, he says, half up front, half at the end. Next day, I had certified funds, $3,000 to him. And he calls me and goes, Mr. Rivera, you paid all up front. You don't have to. And I said, you don't understand. I'm in debt over $160,000. If that doesn't work, $3,000 will be the least of my concern.
Right.
He was just like, I wish everyone saw it that way. At that point, I realized what I got myself into. I'm grateful that it all materialized. But at those moments, you start, you have all these second thoughts. And I say this to say that, you bring your family into this process when you get into this. So you better know what you don't know. So if you don't know, you better ask.
Yeah. So I have a clarifying question I want to ask to make sure I understand. You bought this property and it was a duplex. That's what you looked at all the records. It said duplex. Is that correct?
R6 zoning allows for a multifamily duplex, yes.
Gotcha. But was it currently a duplex or you were making it a duplex?
So that's the thing. The owner had not been operating as a duplex, and it got found when I put my electrical permit, and I needed 2 panels. And I didn't know enough to realize we didn't have 2 panels, which is a simple thing, right? Here's a tidbit. If you don't see 2 meter bases, if you don't see 2 meters, it's not done for a duplex. It's not being used. And sometimes these properties lose their grandfathered rights if it's been a certain amount of time. And I learned that the hard way in Petersburg. And so all this to say, yes, R6 zoning allows for it. The property had square footage, the footprint, but the yard did not meet the criteria to allow for it. And because of that one thing now, and then here's the crazier part. I'll never forget this. I do everything I need to, and I have been consulted, talked about Richmond 300. We talked about affordable housing. We talked about all these things, right? This was my case. And I remember finally when I'm passing the final building, they come back and ask me, did you close the door between the 2 units? And that was the moment that defined whether they were going to allow this or not. Because if I had modified it, they would not have allowed me to proceed. And at this point, I was in it 13, 14 plus months in this property. It was wild, right? In the meantime, I Hail Married it. I had already started the process with the lender to burr out of it. I'm like, hell or high water, we're going to make this work.
That's right.
My wife is, well, what happens? I'm like, honey, sometimes you don't have the luxury to think about what happens. You got one game plan. We're getting that touchdown, right? It's a Hail Mary. Well, you better make sure your QB is on point. You better make sure you threw to the wide receiver. You better make sure everyone did their prayers that day. And don't question if they did it.
Right.
Wow. So
yes.
in those moments where you had like the thought, the negative thoughts, because in that roller coaster there are the downs like this. What did you do to stay positive and stay on track?
It's tough. I tell you, I think the biggest characteristic someone needs to have in this business is grit. You got to have a lot of grit. You got to be forceful. If you don't, I don't know that this is it for you. Respectfully, in this business, I see that. I have to remind myself that no matter what, this is a mental game, right? It's a lot of knowledge, but it's a lot of mental. This business is not hard per se, right? I always try to remind myself that. Like at the end of the day, it's investment. It's a first world country. I am blessed. I lean into my faith, right? I believe in a bigger power than me. I make my prayers. I thank God for what I have. I stay positive. I remind myself that I'll get through it, right? This too shall pass. And now physically, I try to do my thing. If it's at the time, if I'm big in running, I'll go for some runs. If it's lifting, I'll go lift. I lean into people that know more than me. I'll plug in with people that are more experienced or more experienced than me. And that ended up, that's actually how I got the number to Baker Consultants, was a client of mine who started as a wholesaler, since then has retired out of his business as operator in it. And he said, "Hey, dude, do you know X, Y, and Z person?" I said, "No." He goes, "Let me make you an intro." And I'll never forget this. Mark, first his question goes, "How'd you get my number?" And I told him. And he goes, I said, "Someone introduced me to you." And then he goes, "And who was that?" And I told him. He was like, okay, so let's talk about this. Yeah. And I'll tell you, and again, this is all about who you know. And if you don't think it's political, then don't think it's political. But I say this because I'll never forget when I talked to Mr. Baker and he discussed things with me. And he said, "Ray, you're on it," because this is do or die. I have to make this work. So I'm studying everything as much as possible. And he goes, you got it right. The thing about it is, Ray, it's also about just knowing the right people. And sometimes if you just don't know the right people, things don't work. And to this day, I joke around. People go, "Man," since when did you like politics? And I go, "I never did." But you just start to realize that sometimes things move when you just know the right people. And so I'm not saying you shouldn't do things shouldn't do, right? I'm saying you do things the right way, and people know people. It doesn't hurt, right? Simple things, for example, you pull some permits on a property. If you go meet your inspector, you start building relationships with them, they're gonna remember you, and they remember the quality work. That's a little, tidbit. But if you did that with everything else, right? You're inquiring about properties. They start to recognize you. You start to know the people because you've been doing it long enough. They remember who you are. They remember the projects. These are things that help you as you go further in this journey of investment. So yeah, fun stuff.
Yeah, I have to do a little recap of what you're saying to everyone right now, because you are dropping gems and I don't want people to just overlook these things. You're talking about, building relationships, because you need to know what you're doing, but also you need to have the right relationships to get what you want done. You didn't know that you were going to have to go through that with that property. And just to make you feel a little better, I had something similar happen to me with the lot. Wasn't big enough for it to get approved. Yeah. So at those times, you got to hit the do or die button. Like, we got to make it happen. So you're mentioning grit. Like, people, these are things that people are overlooking. Like, well, this is going to be a cakewalk. You get into real estate and you become a millionaire, right? No, you have to be able to go to that next step when things are happening. Like, you can't be folding. If stuff happens, like you said, you have to figure it out. You got to figure out, how can we make this work? Because this has to work. I've noticed that when people have that mentality, it always works. Because this has to work. Like, we're not folding. Like, what are you talking about? So grit, relationships. You talked about leveraging other people's experience. I just want people to take notes on this, because I talk about these things all the time. I don't need to know how to do everything. When there are other people that are more qualified than me and they know how to do it. You realize that you needed help in construction. So you got a Class A contractor that you have a great relationship with to help you in that part of your business. And guess what? Everybody ate. Everybody did well in these deals. So I just don't want people to overlook these things. And of course, because I'm a coach, I'm going to bring this one up too. But you getting a coach is everything, because you get to learn from their mistakes so you don't have to make them. So you're leveraging someone else's experience so you can get to your goal faster. That's the point. So like, I just needed to recap what you were saying, because I'm like, man, they can't miss out on these nuggets. This is, and that's probably just a little bit of the nuggets you gave, but those are some things that really stuck out to me, because like, these are like foundational principles that help you move along in your business. So that was gold, man.
I appreciate it. Even to this day, fast forward, we are now exploring ground up new development, right? And so going vertical. And one of the biggest differences, I would say, between the rehab, and we've done some pretty big, expensive rehabs, right? Close to like $200,000 rehabs. And that's not cheap in our market. To put perspective, our median price is $400,000. At affordable housing, you're looking at sub 200, 300 at this point. So you're spending $200,000 on a rehab. That's almost an affordable house in its entirety. Right. Just to kind of put perspective for those if you're like listening from a much more bougier market. That right kind of coin that people are like, well, I spent $1 million. Well, it's easy $1 million when every house is $2 million. That's actually 50%. Like we're spending 100% to 200%. Put that in perspective. Why I say this is because doing the ground up, we're fixing, right? Excuse me, in the rehab, we're fixing foundations, but they're already pre-existing for the most part. We've done additions, but you're only putting in, an addition, a footing, and that's really it. When you're doing an entire ground up, now that's next level. And what I have done, kind of tied the two, is I've gone back to leaning into the people that know what they're doing. So, for example, we've really capitalized on building this great relationship with our contractor, different contractor now. The other gentleman, for the most part, has retired. He's built himself. He's worth now a couple, if not more, 7 figures, done very well. He's bought a big parcel of land of 10 acres, semi-retired. But when I met him, he was an HVAC technician, just turned Class A general contractor, right? And I was able to be part of that catalyst. So he helps me, and I help him to this day. Fast forward, so we have this contractor, and I'm looking at pricing. Hey, we're thinking that we're going to outsource the foundation, the excavation, the clearance, and all that. And I'm talking to my contractor, and he tells me, hey, Ray, I used to do this type of stuff in Guatemala, background from. The thing is, I just don't know the codes here. So what do? Make a call to my partner. He knows someone who used to be a builder back in the days. We call him in. He consults us, tells us what to do, and we execute it. Well, guess what? For the first time, so we don't outsource this, no subbing. We keep it in-house. We clear it, excavate it. Then we go ahead and actually pour our footings. And in the first inspection, we pass. Flying colors, no issue. And so it was wild to me, because I realized that, like you said, Martine, you don't need to know everything. This isn't really rocket science. It really, really isn't. And even if we did, I always joke around, Elon Musk, right, is not a rocket scientist, but he has a whole lot of rocket scientists that work for him. And so you realize that you could just hack this, and it's kind of crazy. You always think I'm like, am I cheating myself? Like, am I a fraud? Like, and then you realize, like, no. It's just you realize that just like you go to a doctor when you're ill, you don't Google it, because it could be a plethora of options. It could be like tumor versus just stress and a headache, and anything in between. This is the same thing. If you just figure out what you need, and then you figure out who already has done that or is doing that, and then you just plug in, you can just accelerate your growth that much faster and easier. And so that's what we're doing now with our ground up, is reaching out to the people we know that know how to do it or know enough, and whatever they don't know, find a person who does know that, and then you piece it together, and then you realize this is really beautiful thing. So it's exciting. It's a process. It's incredibly exciting though.
Okay. So tell us more about this build to rent model that you wanna start implementing. Like, how does that look? How do you make those numbers work? Because I like to get in people's minds. So my assumption that people are thinking, how can you make it work to rent it out? Like, so many people build to sell. So how do you make that work with the numbers?
So we're exploring that. So right now, a lot of the doors that we have are subsidized. So we started with the subsidized space. I did that intentionally because I feel that if you have a solid foundation, then you can build and take a little bit more risk, right? Do a little bit sexier stuff that can be here, but you can afford to take risk. So, I do this very strategically on purpose. I also want to do sexier stuff. It's just the more you make, the more you have to lose, right?
Yeah.
So you got
Right.
to have to be a little bit more strategic about your next moves. I think when you first start, you have not as much to lose. You got to do what you got to do. And then as you get into this process, you're like, I got to be a little bit more strategic. There's more nowadays. So fast forward, what we're exploring is either doing 4 bedrooms, 2.5 baths with subsidized in opportunity zones, or what I'm also looking to explore is to change that rental strategy. So, not get super into the weeds, but there's so many different ways that you could do rentals on the back end, right? You could do short term, mid term, long term. And then if you do long term, there's people nowadays that are operating businesses, i.e. example, right? You can do like group homes. You can do, and I mean, there's a plethora. There's people who do halfway houses. There's people who do like more for medical. There's people that do, mental. There's so many different strategies that you can use, and especially in today's day and age, you kind of have to look at where's our country, right? Demographically speaking, age-wise, what's happening? Where are the patterns? Where are we at today, and where are they going? I think a lot of prediction and anticipation. Like we look at storage units, example, talking commercially. Storage units are big, but that's because you have a big generations, right? You have the younger generations outpacing, but you have a lot of boomers, big generation, and they're downsizing. So we see a big demand in housing that affords that, like patio style homes in certain areas, a certain price point. And those builders are doing it or taking it. Then the ones are not as much. So similar, what I'm really exploring and doing research on is, and this is what I'm trying to plug in now into, is who's doing what I am trying to explore, right? So who do I know that maybe is doing, a group housing or something for mental people who need, mental needs? What does it require? And so I'm even doing this by going out of my market, going up to Northern Virginia, going up to DC. I'm asking around over there. And so I also share that, like, example, you're watching this on Zoom and Martine, for example, you're doing coaching. You're not in their backyard. You're still experienced. Plug into that. And sometimes it can even be easier if they don't see you as a competitor, right? Because sometimes people have that small world mindset. And so you start to see where people are willing to share versus not. I find that the more you share, the more you put out there, the more like it attracts. So I'm like, let me give the play out. Let me give everything. You need contractors. You need this. You need that. Like, let me give it, because I realize the more I give, somehow it just comes back. So
Right. I mean, that's
not
how it
intentionally,
works.
but it's very true. That's exactly
It's
how it
very
works.
true.
So fast forward, what I'm doing is I'm exploring that, because we're really done it. We're looking into the subsidized income, which is great. But what I'm looking at is that like the highest and best use of that? Because right now, I mean, we're doing decent. Our construction costs, I want to get it down, but just construction, we're looking about $95, $96 per square foot. This is where I'm anticipating being at. This is for foundations and all, and labor materials. We're looking ultimately to get it down closer to, maybe my ideal goal would be get it down to like $75. I think, we still have ways to go, but I think as we scale this, right, as we're doing more nearby, we'll be able to get that, because we can save a little bit more on construction, on labor, on materials. We could do a larger volume on purchases. So I think there's a lot that we can still do. With that being said, we still need knowledge, because as I'm learning about what I'm doing today, I also have to learn about where we're going tomorrow. And so it's a never-ending process. You are always a student. So plugging in is incredibly important.
One theme I'm really getting and hearing you talk is you have really like made your success happen so rapidly because you think who, not how. When it's time to do something, you think of who do I know that already knows how to do that, so I can shorten my learning curve. And I love that. That's actually a book. I don't know if you've read it, but it's a book that's called Who, Not How, because if we're honest, the how is none of our business. We need to know what we need to do, and if you think who already knows how to do it, you're golden. So I don't want people to skip over that, because I'm noticing a trend, and which is it's always, well, who does that and who does. So thank you for sharing that with our audience. I know that you mentioned that you really got your aha moment when you were being an agent and you were helping one of your clients, and you didn't say this, but what it seemed to me is that like you saw someone that reminded you of you, and you said, "What? Why am I not doing that?" And it made you spring into action so that you could start doing it for yourself. But if you were
Absolutely.
talking, yeah, if you were talking to yourself now, given all this experience that you have now, and you were just starting out, and you wanted to share a resource with the people that are listening that was like a game changer that could really help people, what would that be?
Oh, man, that's a solid question. There's a lot of resources. Are you talking about book? Are you talking about network? Are
it,
you talking about
it could be book. Like, what
courses?
was the game changer for you? You started doing this, and it was a game changer. Or this book really was like, man, this was it. When I read this book, I really started like. So, what resource would you like give to people that they want to make this happen for themselves, but maybe they just don't know how to get started, or they just need something that's going to get them over the
You know,
edge?
resources are abundant. It comes back
Mm.
to smart, to be honest with you. I don't get me wrong. I could give shout outs to books. For example, books that I've read that really come into play would be things like Rich Dad Poor Dad. You get shout outs for that all the time. There's a book even called Grit. It's by an author called Angela Duckworth. Very smart lady, and it's like 500 pages long. I try to also emulate as much as possible. There's this book that I read years ago as well called Principles by Ray Dalio, and it talks about things that he did right. He is the most successful private hedge fund manager ever in U.S. history, to the point where he doesn't take on new clients regardless of your net worth. And he baked this book because that's the third iteration of the life cycle, which is on your exit, right? This life, it's limited. And so this is him giving back to the world in a way that he can do large scale without charging you a whole lot of money to do, and which most of us wouldn't be privy to afford, me included.
Right, right.
So, these are books that I just kind of read that really changed the way I see things. And then from there, I really plugged into a lot of like the local investment groups. I just started going out. Example, big one for me, Richmond Ring with Rich Lennon. That was one I had done. Trying to kind of think back then. I went to a lot. I went to a whole lot, and I was pretty consistent. It's funny, I don't do it as much today. I do it from time to time. With that being said, I just kind of just showed up. Just showed up. I as talkative as I can be, funny, when I'm in a room and I don't know someone, I can be very nervous. So typically what I do, I'll go into the middle of the room, I'll sit in the front, because now I have to talk to people, even if it is just saying, excuse me, I now have to talk to people, right? And the moment I say, excuse me, and they're like, oh, sorry, I'm like, hi, I'm Raymond, who are you? What's your name? How long have you been coming? What's your specialty? Like, what are you going after? Blah, blah, blah. How'd you get into it? And then you just start striking conversation. And I think people can feel like the sense of either genuineness or not. And then people could also see like whether you're really like in it to win it or not. But then more importantly, what I realize is people that have given me advice, which so many people have given me insight. But one thing is the execution part, right? People, I think, mentors who've been there, done that, really judge if I've given you advice, are you doing it? Because if not, respectfully, then this is just philosophical work. I'm just wasting time. Versus people pay a lot of money for people's insights and experience. So that to me was like, if anyone giving me any insights or advice that's applicable for what I need, I should really take it seriously, not just like, oh, thanks. No,
Right.
appreciate them. Take a minute afterwards, plug in, spend a week, an hour a day looking into that. And then if you discard it, cool. But now you know why you're discarding it. And if it's something that is applicable, lean into it. Hit them up, be like, oh my gosh, you're the man, you're the woman, like you are amazing. Thanks so much for giving me that plug. Question, I got here, now what? Right? Like,
Right.
realizing that people are like, oh my gosh, versus some people are like, hey, let me take you out for coffee. And it's like, you're gonna wanna like kind of like you're a down drive and pull everything out of me, and it's like, come on now, come on,
Right,
don't do
right.
that. So it's important. It's important. Lots of things that you can do. Another big one was like bigger pockets. I spent a lot of time in bigger pockets. I knew that I wanted to flip. So I wanted to build capital. So I spent a whole lot of time just really super hyper focused on flipping. I initially didn't look at buy and holds. I didn't look at anything tax wise. I just went in on one thing. And sometimes I question like, was that the right thing? Because like I feel I almost missed out on the short term rental movement some years back, and everyone was like talking about it, and I'm like, nope. No, no. However, I think that's also one of the reasons why I've been able to get to where I'm at and where I'm going is because there's so many like shiny object syndromes in life, so many strategies. I feel like you have to figure out which one you want to master and then go master it. and then worry about everything else. And I do this with I have a 6-year-old son, and I tell him, like, Vincent, if I want to become a black belt, so he was doing Taekwondo, I'm like, can I become a black belt today? He's like, no. Like, Vincent, what if I just pay them money? Can they just give me a black belt? He's like, no. I'm like, so what if I go on the internet and just buy a black belt? He's like, it's internet. And I'm like, exactly. And so I'm trying to, like, show him, because, like, that's the future. So I'm super hyper aware of those things, like how important it is for us. So yeah, lots of resources, a lot of them more locally, but hopefully those help.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. I hope you guys took some notes, jotted it down, and make sure that you implement that on your journey. I want to thank you, Ray, for being on the podcast today. Like, you just dropped so many gems, and we just really appreciate you sharing that with our audience. So for people that are listening, if they want to get in contact with you, what's the best way for them to reach you?
Yeah, I do. I'm always on social media. I like my Instagram. Check my Instagram several times a day. They can shoot me a DM in there. Rivera Ray, that's my last name. Rivera, like river with an A at the end, Rivera. Rivera Ray, Ray, and then RVA for Richmond, Virginia. You can shoot me a DM. In there, they'll be able to see all my contact information, or they can shoot me a text. I tell people, like, just shoot it straight, right? Like, hey, I just need X, Y, and Z. And I like to help the community. I really, really do. I'm very structured about my day, so I like to, like, stay like a horse with blinders on. So that's unfortunate. Some people, you're too busy for me. It's like, I am and I'm not. It's just I'm so focused on what I need to achieve that, especially as an operator, I get paid on results. So I got to get results.
Right. I love it. I love it. Lori, if people want to get in contact with you, what is the best way to get in contact with you?
Yeah, I'm on all the social medias. Love talking real estate and problem solving, deal making, and partnering with lenders. We do a lot of volume in Virginia. And also, Martine will share my email in the notes, and love to connect.
That's awesome. That's awesome. If you guys want to connect with me, the best way to connect with me is through my free Facebook group. It's called The Freedom Inc. We talk all things buy and hold. If you come in there and you're talking about flipping, we're kicking you out. I'm saying so
She's
much,
brutal.
you might start believing it. No, but we just want to encourage people to start buying and holding so you can create that long-term wealth. Allow those assets to start doing the work for you. And also, I have a one-on-one coaching program and a group coaching program as well. But I want to invite you to join the free coaching first in that group and see if you like what you see. See if this is something that you really want to explore and then take the next step. But until next time, Do It Movement listeners, see ya!
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for tuning into our show. If you need more hand-holding on your rental property investor journey, book a 15-minute strategy session with Martine. We can see if you're a fit for the Freedom Inc. fam, link in the show notes. Also be sure to join the free Freedom Inc. Facebook group, where each week Martine goes over a real-life rental property investor deal and shows you how the deal was found, how to get the money, and how to make it cash flow and much more. If you'd like to connect with Lori, be sure to email her at vitalizeproperties@live.com. Until next time, see you.